Hola, my name is Samuel Bautista Lazo. Uh, my Zapotec name is 3 Deer 5 Rain. I literally made it up and I went online and looked up the correlation of the ancient calendar and the modern calendar. So my name in the Zapotec calendar is 3 Deer 5 Rain. I will explain to you the meaning of the patterns and symbols that we weave in our rugs. So literally, these patterns have stayed with us probably for the last 9,000 years since our ancestors started developing culture with the domestication of corn near the caves of Gilanakits in near Mitla, and there they started to use some pigments to do some like cave art. You will see in our rugs a lot of this diamond pattern, which literally comes from the skin of the rattlesnake. This diamond pattern, it's a perfectly symmetrical symbol. It remains a diamond in every way you turn it. And it teaches us about the balance of the essential four energies that were used to create the universe. Just like we have fire, water, wind, and earth, we have four seasons, four elements. We have also in our bodies, this is reflected. Our bodies could be divided in four. The navel, it's the center that unifies these four energies. From the navel to our head, we have the bird energy, which is the spiritual energy, which, just like the bird, tries to abstract us from the material world to take us to the heavens. And we have organs like the heart and the brain that create thoughts and emotions that are intangible. And these thoughts and emotions can transform the world and can also be passed from generation to generation. Then from the navel below, we have the snake energy, which is the material energy. The snake walks with its full body on the ground. And just like our legs and our reproductive organs, the snake energy grounds us to the planet and ensures survival. The snake has a lot of symbolism. It's an ancient animal, so it represents the ancient wisdom, the ancient knowledge that is passed from generation to generation. When the snake sheds its skin, it's representing that generational knowledge that's passed on. And then when you balance, like the bird and the snake, and they become one, you create the third state, which is the Quetzalcoatl. And literally, it's like a state of mind, it's bringing two opposite types of awareness, like thinking like the gods, but with your feet on the ground. And uniting these two energies will allow you to see the world through God's eye, which is this diamond. You also have the left and the right side of your awareness. On the left side of your body, you store the energy of the Nahual, which is the energy that you use for dreams and intuition. For our ancestors, these dreams and their intuition, were so valid and as real as this world that we could see and touch. And they've mastered techniques to understand those dreams and to take their full awareness into the realm of dreams. On the right side, we have the energy of the tonal, which is the power of language, sound, and logic. Literally, words are the stuff of magic that create this reality. And also, this energy connects us, the logic, to the understanding of the cosmos, and the intuition connects you to the understanding of nature. So again, you bring both of them together to bring heaven and earth. And once these four energies are balanced in this harmonious way, then we see the world through what we call Ojo de Dios, the eye of God. And I think in the 60s, people were weaving eyes of gods, during the summer of love. In the middle, we have a pattern here that's a butterfly. So you could see it's stylized, for weaving purposes. These are the wings and the antenna. And it's there to represent the wisdom that comes when you see the world through God's eye. And it's like a flower too that's ever expanding. That's why we weave it in different forms. We weave it like this because you could weave a diamond within a diamond within a diamond, like an ever expanding flower, an ever expanding awareness. And it could get as intricate as you like. That same pattern, it's represented in many ways. We have here different shapes of diamonds. And these patterns, like the diamond pattern, will never change. It's part of the symbol. But you could change its form or its color. That's the artistic freedom that weavers have. So that's one of the main patterns. Others are, and these patterns as well, you find them in the ancient carvings, in the sacred site, which sits now beneath the Catholic Church here in Teotitlán. Because when the Spanish arrived, they tried to impose their new religion and just like put it on top of our ancient beliefs. But Octavio Paz said this, the Mexicans put a mask on. And from early on, we didn't really fight the Spanish. We just let them pass through on their way to Mexico City. And we took their looms, their wool, and we were always traders. And but what happened, they would go on processions with like the image of a Catholic saint, but underneath in the basket they will have their ancient gods of corn, of rain, or of lightning, and they would pray for rains. And that happened like quite often until they got caught. But what I'm trying to say is when you visit the church, a lot of those stones were from the ancient pyramids, but they were turned so that the image and the ancient symbols is still visible. So like when you're going to church, you're still remembering like the ancient roots. And a lot of what shamans did is found ways to preserve this knowledge. I mean, they became priests, they like infiltrated the system. And it was a way, they said, they were using their Nahual energy, to just go with that flow and to really try to survive and to preserve the knowledge. And it's through weaving that these symbols have survived, because they could destroy the temples, they burned all the books. But as long as we keep weaving, we memorize these symbols at a really young age, since like age 5, 6, 7, as soon as we start to get, dexterity, we use the back frame of a chair to start to weave little rugs. And since then, we start to memorize the symbols and how to make them. But in doing this, and in relating that to the ancient tales and stories of our ancestors, that knowledge has survived, and it's still alive. So this is what I want to show you next. Let me pull it here. This pattern, which comes in different variations. We call this the cycle of life. This pattern here is the pattern that you get when you join your hands in this way. And it's bringing the left and the right side of your awareness together. It's like what scientists talk about now when they talk about the left and the right side of the brain. But also, I've noticed that you could create this pattern by joining hands with many people and make a circle to join in community. And just like the ancient writing system, there is different ways in which you could read the symbol. You could read it as a whole, or you could read it like part by part. Just like we have 4 knuckles, there is 4 steps, each representing 13 years. So we go from 0 to 52, from birth, childhood, youth, maturity. They say that 52 is an important year because it's at that age you have probably grown up, had kids, built a house, maybe had a profession. And then, at 52, with the age, it comes naturally a stage in life in which you ask yourself why, what's the purpose of all this, and just it's built into the biological cycle that you have that period of reflection and you reflect upon your past experiences to create knowledge and wisdom that you could pass to the next generation. So then that shift comes here with the maturity, and then there is another 13 years when we start to get old and eventually we die. Uh, our ancestors believed that we would spend another 13 years in the other world and then we'll come back and start over again in a cycle, a never-ending cycle of life and death, which you could escape if you take the path of the warrior, which here is represented with many more steps, like you see on this rug. And this pattern no longer represents biological growth, but spiritual growth. Our ancestors believed that we come to this world just to gather experiences, and that those experiences are stored in our being and in our essence, and when we die, we return to the main source, which in our culture happens to have the form of an eagle. This eagle is feeding from those experiences. But if you think about it from a philosophical point of view, it's like the universe that creates itself to know itself. It's like the snake that eats its tail. It's that cycling of experiences. So this symbol, it's curling more like this. And eventually it's going to morph into this symbol, which is the pattern that you get when you join your hands in this way. So now the left, the Nahual and the Tonal have become one. They're unified. And I call this, or we often call it we could call it the Nahual life cycle symbol, because Nahuales are like people that have achieved, they've mastered the world of dreams and intuition, and the power of logic and sound. So they can transfer their awareness into that realm of the Nahual where everything is possible. And you hear tales of Nahuales that become eagle, that become wind, that turn into anything, that can talk to plants. And that was their function, to really communicate with the world of plants and animals and the world of like the dead ones, and to bring that knowledge to this world that we could see and touch. So really Nahual is just a person, a woman or a man of knowledge that creates knowledge. And what the difference is that a Nahual, they can decide when to die. Death is not something that happens to them. It's more of a conscious choice. They know exactly when it's going to happen or when they want it to happen, and they decide when to leave their bodies. And when they die, they return to the sun, which is here represented by this cross. It's called also Quetzalcoatl's cross, the fifth pointed cross, because you have the four direction and the fifth direction, which is in the middle, which is up and down. And in many of the rituals, you go like, you bow to the four directions, and then you bow up and down. You acknowledge the heaven and the underworld. Even when you drink now, in popular culture, when you drink tequila, you go arriba, abajo, al centro, y adentro. And I mean, what I'm also wanting to say is that a lot of this ancient knowledge, it's very much alive. You see it here in the day-to-day life of the indigenous communities, and you see it in people's faces when you go to the market. They have these smiles and they're all happy, and they're strong, courageous people and resilient people. And it comes from, this almost 10,000 years of cultural development. Just like all the other 6 smaller cultures of the world, 10,000 years ago we were domesticating corn and developing all this deep knowledge of plants for food, for medicinal uses, for dye stuff, like for this. And that's what I'm trying to communicate to the wider audience, especially in Mexico, because a lot of our history was suppressed on purpose. It was written by the winners, which is often the case. So they tend to write in a biased way to justify their actions at the time. But there is a new movement among indigenous people to recover their history and to interpret the history from their own ancestors' perspective. For example, we call this land from Central America to North America, we call it Sem Anahuac in the language of the Aztecs, which is Nahuatl, and it means the place surrounded by the big waters. From Central America to South America, it's called Tahuantinsuyo by the Incas. And but then you will notice that there is a lot of commonality in this symbology, in these crosses and these diamonds. The Incas have it, here we have it, the Native Americans have it. And we're just part of one big, we call it a big like cultural, philosophical womb, you know, that spread and that had many children and that tells the stories in different ways. But in reality, you know, we were all like, in the past, I'm sure we were all trading all the way to the north. There's ancient trails that goes all the way to the pueblos and further beyond. So, and with trade, people were carrying the stories and the knowledge that was passed and shared. So just one big family, and that's why I wanted to show this. But we have many more symbols, so stay tuned and we'll make another video. Thank you.